everybody, it's Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report, and today we have live and in person Shelley Neese with an exciting announcement. The Bible Fiber book is out. I have my copy. She's going to sign it. I'm so excited. But we wanted to make sure that we made sure that you all knew that those podcasts that you've been following since COVID that are so enriching and uplifting are now at your fingertips, and you can have a Bible study or read it on your own or give it as a gift. So Shelley, please tell us more about this process and what you're hoping to really convey, taking Bible Fiber from the podcast realm into the written word where we can distribute it even more widely.
Right. Well, definitely writing the book was a little bit different than in the podcast, I'm pretty conversational and sometimes thinking out loud as I'm recording. So I thought in the beginning, well, that was 2 years worth of work, walking through each of the prophets and writing and editing and researching. But then it wasn't so easy to translate it into book form. So it was just almost like starting over in a way, but just it felt nice when I switched from podcast world to book world of just revisit. It felt like being back with my 12 friends again. But this time we were more acquainted. I mean, really, the first time in doing the podcast and making those recordings, going through each of the prophets, like it had been years since I had read Obadiah. Nahum isn't exactly the most uplifting of the books. So even if I had danced in Zechariah and Malachi, just having the discipline of doing the less popular of the minor prophets, but reading them in order was a certain experience. And so it just felt nice to be doing that again. But one of the main reasons behind the book is that I hear all the time Christians say that they feel guilty that they don't read these books more, which is fine. You're allowed to have favorite books of the Bible. It's not like picking a favorite child or something. You're certainly allowed to like Isaiah more than you like Obadiah. But I also didn't want people to feel bad walking away from the books if they didn't get anything from it, if they didn't feel spiritually edified by it, because I don't think people are responsible for being experts on the ancient Near East just because they're a Christian. And so I wanted to just lock arms with the reader and go through the text in a way that this is what you need to know about the Babylonian Empire. This is what you need to know about the Syrian Empire. And not in a way that will just weigh you down with information, but this is what's critical to the prophet in order to walk away with the message that the prophet is trying to give us.
Okay, and to your point, while it isn't every Christian's responsibility or, let's say, presupposition to be an expert on the Near East, it is our responsibility to actually try to find out more than we already know. Right? The responsibility is to say, what should I learn? What do I know I don't know that I need to find more about? And this Bible Fiber book is an excellent resource for it because you don't just approach it necessarily like a Sunday school teacher or a pastor. It is our responsibility to find out what we don't know. And we have a visitor, Lulu, sit down. And to that end, this is a resource for that because you actually take each chapter and each book and you explain who this person is, who this writer was, what was their background that we can possibly know, right? That you have researched through several sources before you wrote it down. So you were able to get into the mind of what were these people, what was their lives like? What was the atmosphere in the society or the culture? What was going on outside their borders, inside their borders, if they didn't have any borders because they were exiles. So that is a unique place for them to then say, what can I learn from the text?
Right.
And as you went through that process, were you finding things that you discovered about the text that, you've done a lot of study academically and personally in the Bible, but then were there new revelations for you personally as you put that whole thing together, the whole context of where these prophets and writers are coming from and what their message is and how they conveyed it?
Right. Well, I think, so the major prophets, so Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, their books are long. And so they're taking you on a journey of their own lives as much as they are their own historical periods. But the minor prophet, and so that's a marathon. Like you're in a long journey if you're walking through Isaiah or Jeremiah. With the minor prophets, you're running at a sprint. And so you might be jumping from the Assyrian Empire to the Babylonian Empire to pre-exilic and then post-exilic. So you just have to keep up with them. And so you can't get too bogged down in the details of the historical period. So I felt like when I was running at a sprint with the 12 minor prophets, they each have a very different literary approach, a different type of poetry, and a different personality. I mean, in Habakkuk is very honest with God. Habakkuk is struggling with a world that he feels like is stuck in a cycle of violence. And the prophet Micah flirts with pluralism. Like, he wants to see the good in everyone if they believe in the creator of the universe. And so you just start to feel their personalities. Nahum and Obadiah, they're sarcastic. Joel, I feel like if Joel had been alive today, he would have been a high churcher. Like, he clearly he likes liturgy. He likes everyone participating in a little call and response. So I felt like, just like how we have our own spiritual personalities today in a way that we express that, you can feel that in the prophets. And the 12 gives you a better chance at doing that, because when you're in Isaiah or Jeremiah for these, 50 chapters, you're just really exposed to one personality and one thought pattern. But that's why I like studying the minor prophets as a library, as them all together. The one that just, when you write and when you research, in the way that I approach God, it can be, it's not always, but it can often be an experience that feels like a very worshipful experience, that I feel like I'm learning things about God through the biblical text, but I'm also called to worship in that response. And I will say that Zechariah and Malachi, being able to land with those two prophets was also a wonderful experience, because especially as a Christian, I mean, Zechariah and Malachi they're going to have the final words in our canonized Old Testament. They're sort of the ones that are going to lead us into Bethlehem. And so they get the last say. And so I feel like we need to put a lot of weight on what that message is. And so they really are just leading right up to John the Baptist and right up to the birth of Jesus. And so I had never really read them with that in mind, that this is the Old Testament's last words, and how does that prep me for what's going to happen 400 years later. Wow. And so even that, just as a Christian, was a really devotional experience, I guess.
That's beautiful. So this experience of putting together podcasts, and then when you had to double back to go over everything to turn it into a book, you were in a constant walk with God along the way. So what a privilege it is for your job, for your career, for your passion, to fall in line with your faith.
But also, we're lucky, right? To get to read the Bible for a job is also very lucky. So that's one reason, too, why when I'm approaching the reader, I'm like, let me just try and help save you time. Because it took me a long time to read this one chapter, this one Jonah is a delight. Jonah is the easiest of them all because it's a story. It doesn't even
somewhat familiar. That's kind of a familiar song, but also a book. It's the story that we all remember from Sunday school. There's a couple of Old Testament stories you remember. It's Noah, Jonah and the whale, and the parting of the Red Sea.
I went through we have I don't have my kids in a Christian school, so I have no budget when it comes to Christian Bibles. We just buy all the Christian children's Bibles. And I went through them to see if any of the 12 minor prophets had made it in children's Bibles, and it's only ever Jonah.
Yep.
Only ever Jonah. Even the major prophets aren't even in children's Bibles.
Wow.
So a lot of times I do think, besides Jonah, adults are approaching these texts for the first time, even if they have grown up in the church. Yep. And so, because it is a privilege that I get to read the Bible and study the Bible for work, I also don't expect everyone to be able to do that.
Exactly.
So that's why I want the book, I'm not talking down to the reader. I'm like, I want to save you time in this text by getting straight to the point. And not just in a way of application, because I really do trust believers and trust readers you can figure out how to apply this text to your own life. I just want to clarify the message.
Right.
But how the message applies to your own life is up to you.
Yes. And to your point about taking the 12 as a library and when the readers go through it, whether you've listened to the first podcast series along the way or you haven't and you're going to start with the book and go back or do some combination, it is to me something very enlightening to take these writers and show that breadth of personalities that you can then relate to, right? Mm-hmm. Because these were all just people, and people think of the ancient folks as just some different breed, and they're just people. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have the same struggles. And they're
walking through the struggles that they're talking about. So,
and they're able to share them.
Right. So they're going to experience the exile, or they're going to experience, the hardships of being subordinate to the different empires of their day. And so when they're speaking to the people about what lies ahead, they're about to walk through it with them. And then sometimes more so. So you have the prophets like Hosea or Ezekiel that are going to experience really difficult personal hardships before the people even experience it. They're going to be made an example of how hard it is going to be. So that's one thing I really appreciate about the prophets too, is that this is someone who isn't just preaching to the people about these are all the wrongs that you've done and this is the punishment that's coming. They're going to walk through the punishment together. And I mean, some of them were resistant to the prophetic call because of that. So,
and that's something we can all relate to.
Exactly. And,
so is there anything that the folks that have gone through the podcast first and then get this book, and then I want to ask twofold, and if anybody's never been through the podcast series but want to discover this book, is there anything you want the reader or the listener, whichever order they do it in, to understand if they do it one at a time and then follow one with the other? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what can they see different? You mentioned your conversational voice in the podcast. It is conversational. It's not a preacher. It's not a teacher. It's someone telling us, just a storytelling. You do it like a storytelling. And then, of course, refining that voice for the written word. So what are the differences people will find, or the uniqueness of each that's enlightening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly just, are you an audio learner or are you a visual learner? And so I'm trying to play to both categories. I know for myself that I'm a visual learner, especially with biblical text. But I'm also a busy mom, and so I also love to throw in earbuds and listen to the Bible or listen to sermons. And so I think even if you use the two in conjunction just with your own lifestyle of like, this week's a busy week for me and I just need to listen to a podcast while I drop the kids off at school, and then you can catch up. You can listen to Jonah that way, but you can read Haggai because it's trickier. I'm even hoping that people can bounce back and forth based off of their own learning style, because everyone is super different, especially because the biblical text is so dense and so rich that you need to be able to experience it in both ways to be able to process it. In terms of when I've participated in a Bible study, so twice now I've done an in-person Bible study based off of what I was learning on the prophets. And because really, Bible Fiber, the podcast, a friend once told me that it's like being in a Bible study with me, that I never share the mic. So I don't feel great about that part. So my hope too is that the book allows it to be something that people can take and be in a Bible study with other people. My hope is that by having the book, they can have a Bible study with other people, and this can be a guide, this can be an aid, but use it as a launch point for what the different Bible study people, how it has applied and spoke to them in their own lives. Because certainly I don't have a monopoly on God speaking to me through the prophets. That's been a fun experience. I did a Bible study 2 summers ago, just walking through the book of Jonah with other women, and I was the most quiet participant. I was learning so much about what they were learning through the text too. So this is just a jump off point to get you to read the prophets first of all, to fill in the gaps of what is difficult about the text and admitting that this is difficult. But then you take it by yourself or with your group of friends to how is God speaking to you through this? And I promise you, how God speaks to you through Zechariah is going to be different than what I heard.
Exactly.
But each a message catered to where we're at and what we need to hear from the Lord.
Well, just a reminder for everybody, the book is on Amazon.com. All you have to do is search Shelley Neese or Bible Fiber. It's also on your website, ShelleyNeese.com. As well, you can get all the podcasts for free on our YouTube channel, as well as anywhere you get your podcast.
Yeah.
Whether it's your Apple Podcast.
And it is enrolled in Kindle Unlimited right now.
Okay.
So at least for the next couple months, if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can read it for free or just bounce in and out of it.
Next, and if you do decide to do it with a group, you definitely have the option to tell your group, everybody either check this link and listen to it or read it or some combination thereof. And it is really across the board for different learning types to get their hands and minds around it and then learn from it. And that's where the discussion can be. So Shelley, thanks for joining us. It's great to see you in person. And Lulu joined us. Sorry about that, everybody. And again, find Bible Fiber on Amazon. Follow us on social media. Check ShelleyNeese.com, her website, for her other book is there, The Copper
And if you
Scroll.
go to either Jerusalem Connection or ShelleyNeese.com, there's going to be a devotional guide. So to just help you with, I didn't want to waste any pages in the book for places to journal or answer questions. So that's just a free PDF that's downloadable from the website.
On the website. Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Shavua Tov, and have a great week.
עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו חי, עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו, עוד אבינו חי. עם ישראל, עם ישראל, עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל, עם ישראל.